My name's Lucy Bennett. I'm the Artistic Director of Stopgap Dance Company. Stopgap creates original dance productions with exceptional disabled and non-disabled dancers. We tour nationally and internationally. The initial idea for Scene 3 in Artificial Things was a bit of a daydream. It was snowing and I started to imagine what it would be like to be trapped inside a snow globe. And I thought about all the happy scenes that you get inside a snow globe, and I thought about whether we could create a sad scene within a snow globe. And I actually saw this image of Laura, one of our dancers, on a collapsed wheelchair with someone watching her from afar. And I think I thought about whether he'd just left her, or whether he was coming to support her, or whether he was just observing. As a company, we work quite collectively on the material. We say we devise it together. So I bring a lot of tasks for the dancers to explore and develop. We spend quite a lot of time improvising and filming the improvisation and then picking out movements that we like and developing it. We spent a lot of time in C3 watching the way that Laura Jones moves in her wheelchair. We found ways of echoing her details, her style, her rhythm. And then we would find our own translations for Laura's movement and create a kind of unison of textures, we call it, where we tumble around her, creating circular patterns with her, using her movement material. In fact, I really enjoy watching that section from above because you can see all the tracks in the snow of the circular patterns. We also tell a lot of stories in the company, so many personal stories are woven into the piece. And the final solo that Dave Toole does is very personal to him, and that's why there's a track of music that's quite old-fashioned. It's a song that his father used to sing, and he always dedicates that solo to his family. So to begin with, we always at Stopgap invite a few like-minded teachers and choreographers in to help us with the process. We call it springboard workshops, and one teacher in particular that influenced the final scene was Charlie Morrissey. He's a contact improvisation based teacher, and he came in for 3 sessions and really worked with the dancers on their listening to one another and their sensitivity towards each other, and that really gave us a good foundation to launch into the choreography of Scene 3. So the audience have been through a range of emotions watching Artificial Things, and this is the final scene. I think to begin with, in Scene 1 the audience are curious, and in Scene 2 they're shocked and surprised and saddened, and in Scene 3 we have to let the snow settle. It's kind of the fallout of the rock and roll of Scene 2. So there's a lot of time and space within this piece. I think it's about finding a resolution, about finding a harmony. The dancers are in a state of shock and they have to rebuild, they have to find a new way of moving forward, and they do this through being humble, through learning from each other and listening to each other. I think it's a lot about memories, about the past, living with you as you move forward. So as well as the improvisation and the filming and the working on duets and group work, we also sometimes take influence from images, and I was kind of interested in the idea of time passing, but people being kind of trapped in the past or history repeating itself. And so we looked at a lot of portraits of families and different groups of people and gatherings from kind of the Victorian period or the Edwardian period, and the dancers really looked at the facial expressions, the gait, the physicality of these people from the past, and we just created a section where we moved from image to image. In Scene 3 I wanted to reflect Scene 1 a little bit. I guess I wanted it to be an echo, or I guess an exploration of history repeating itself. There are some similar movements in Scene 3 to Scene 1, and I wanted the audience to kind of recognise that there was a similar shape or the same shape, but maybe because the dancers had been through so much, they've been on this journey, that the way that they portrayed this movement looked different, as if it was more experienced. there are several kind of tumbling sequences within scene 3 which get repeated, but maybe in a different direction or with a different person doing a different element of the dance. And within those tumbling sections, there's little details from Laura's movement vocabulary, like her chin or her shoulders, that you could look out for, that hook all the dancers in together, so that although they've got different physicalities, they're blending really nicely in the unison. The structure of scene 3 is quite different to the way that I usually make structures. Actually, I usually have quite a lot of shifts in dynamics and energy within a piece to, I guess, surprise the audience. And so in scene 3, I really wanted to challenge myself, but also as a reaction to scene 1 and 2, which have been quite boisterous. So scene 3 is a really slow and gradual build up to a climax. And there's a lot of space in the beginning for the audience to observe and just kind of calm down after scene 2. And then gradually it builds up through kind of harmonious dancing to something that's a little bit more lively. And then at the end, it's quite poignant because Dave reminisces and we're reminded that we're haunted by our regrets. In scene 3, there are 2 females and 2 male dancers, and they've all got different physicalities and different ranges of experience, which is something that Stopgap's really interested in having a range of physicalities, ways of learning and perspectives on the world, so that we can explore humanity, I guess. Within scene 1 and scene 2, there were actually 5 dancers. There were 3 males and 2 females, and I was kind of interested in the final scene of what would happen if we took a really strong presence out of scene 3, and how would the kind of group dynamics change with one person missing. How would they fill that kind of gap, and how would the audience sense that kind of sense of loss of one of the dancers who was such a strong part of the company not being in the final scene. It's a stage production, but within the stage production, the designer was heavily influenced by Goran Đurović, an artist that I found during the research process that really clicked with my ideas of kind of politics and hierarchy and group dynamics. And we decided to set artificial things within an artificial world. It's kind of almost a display cabinet on stage, so there's a frame within the stage which the dancers never go in and out of, and then within that frame there's what we call a vitrine, which is a display cabinet which one of the dancers is in. The designer is called Anna Jones from Curious Space, and I work quite closely with her on lots of other projects. I really like having a design element as part of the company's work, and really kind of giving the choreography that we do a sense of place and a sense of time. I was really lucky to work with a very experienced lighting designer, Shaheen Yabravan. He's quite an exceptional artist, so actually I shared with him the work and kind of let him do his thing. He knew that I was after a real filmic look to the work, and so I know that in scene 3 he created lots of gradual build up of light, and there are not many kind of sharp changes, and it's kind of like a warm sunrise that builds throughout the piece. The costume came under Anna Jones's area, as she was in charge of design. Scene 3 is kind of like a worn down version of scene 1 and scene 2. They're quite ghostly figures. Their costumes are quite washed out. They're quite sparse, and there's kind of plenty of skin on show for the side lights to just highlight, so we can really see the movement material. For scene 3, I worked with Andy Higgs. I was really interested in his piano composition because it reflected the first composer, Chris Benstead, actually. It was a really organic process working with Andy. He spent a lot of time in the studio within the creation process, observing the dancers, improvising when they improvise. He used both the inside and the outside of the piano, which I really liked. And he spent a long time recording kind of snowy soundscapes and also recording the paper snow that we worked with. Andy worked within the studio with the dancers. He watched and observed, he improvised while they were dancing and gradually built up the composition. He worked quite closely with Dave on the solo because Dave wanted to use a track that his father used to sing, and so we got the rights for that track. And then I really like the idea of this kind of music from the past floating in on the wind, and so throughout the piece you hear a little gradual hint of that track until it comes in the final scene when Dave does his solo. So I think the audience will have been on quite a big journey with scene 1 and scene 2, and they would have followed the characters through the ups and the downs of the kind of group dynamics of the piece. When they get to scene 3, I think they will start to see the harmony within the group and how we can rebuild and work together, the listening, and I think they will connect with that and they will enjoy that. I think they will find a resolution and a sense of peace towards the end of the work. But I think the final scene of kind of time moving on with the kind of ticking of the clock and then the portraits, the old-fashioned portraits that we see, that kind of sense of family and that sense of being trapped in the past. I think there is a tinge of sadness that although we do move on and we do find a way to move on, we can't forget the things that maybe we're not happy about. I think I would like the audience to look out for details within the unison of how the non-disabled dancers have translated the movement material of Laura, who uses a wheelchair, just to really see that kind of harmonious unison. I think that's something that we worked quite hard to achieve without us all being exactly the same shape and the same rhythm. I also think the end solo of Dave Tools is worth looking out for. The moment when he finally takes the jacket off of the kind of headless dummy that's been in the piece all the way through, and just trying to maybe work out what it is that Dave is saying with his solo, the story that he is telling.